for being here. We are here to meet and hang out with Amy Reichert, who is our keynote speaker for our conference coming up in Manitowoc in October. Yay! Hi, Amy.
Hey, hi.
So, we did this book club for The Simplicity of Cider.
Yay.
This is a book from 2017. And we'll talk a little bit about the book. And I just want to say up front, it's totally okay if you did not read it. If you just want to meet Amy, nobody's going to yell at you. I absolve you from all
There
guilt
won't
if you
be a
didn't finish the
test.
book. Um, However, I do want to just say you might have some spoilers, and so we make no guarantees that you
Yes.
will not hear some spoilers. So, um, I think maybe we'll just start by Amy. I like to, when Ken and I do the podcast, we always like to say, tell us your origin story because, you are a superhero. We're in a writer community, so so tell us how you got here. I know I read on your website about being a technical writer, but tell us
Yes.
about the path.
So I was never that author that grew up from a young age thinking, I'm going to be a writer. That was not me. It never occurred to me that I could write a whole book, let alone I'm up to six now. So it started for me, but so while I didn't think I could be a writer, I've always told myself stories. So I was that kid who I was, in class daydreaming about the cute boy, making up a story in my head about us, or pretending I had superpowers. So that was how my brain worked. It wasn't until after I had my kids, I was fortunate enough that I could stay home with them, and they were approaching the age where they were getting ready to go back to school or to start school. And I was like, wow, I'm going to have all this time during the day to do something. Haha, funny. Uh, there's never enough time. But I wanted to come up with something else. And because I had the luxury to kind of pick and choose, I started thinking, well, what could I do with that? And I had heard an interview, and you may laugh at this, with Stephanie Myers. And she said exactly what I said. She'd never thought of herself as a writer, but she'd always told herself stories. And I'm like, well, if not that I have written Twilight, nor will I write Twilight, because gee, that success would be nice. But I'm like, well, if she can do that, I can try it. So I started thinking of ideas, and the first one that came to they always say write what you know, and I had spent a lot of time when I was young, well, teenage years, working in restaurants. So I was very familiar with the restaurant community. I love to cook. And so I started thinking, well, what if my main character was a chef? And well, who's the hardest person for a chef to fall in love with? Well, a restaurant critic. And that it all kind of came into being was my first book, The Coincidence of Coconut Cake. But back it up a little bit, before I even got to that point, I was a technical writer before kids. And I will say that was a wonderful experience in getting other people to read things they wrote, even though it was very boring things like click the OK button. Um, it helped thicken my skin and also learn how to take feedback from multiple different sources and incorporate that into my changes when I was editing. So it was really a good building block. I've never been too precious about my words. It's always about what's going to get the point across the most efficiently. So that's kind of where it came about. That's how I came to writing. And I was just really stubborn with that first book. I must have rewritten it like 15 times because a lot of people will write a draft and then try and get an agent and they'll fail and then they'll move on to another story. And I was just so stubborn that I kept revising and learning more about the writing process and having more people read it and just repeat, 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 repeat. And so it took me like 14, 15 months to find an agent because I kept doing that process. And then once I had an agent, it took another 10 months before we got a book deal for that first one. So it took a lot of time and a lot of rewriting, a lot of
Wow.
learning. So that's kind of how I came to be. Yeah.
I love it. And so you've been writing for how long now?
So I started writing in 2010. My first book didn't come out until 2015. So
Okay.
I'd say, what is that, 17 years?
I mean,
Because to me, it counts from when I started writing.
sure. I mean,
That's when I decide. Because
okay.
if you write, you're a writer, all of you people.
I love it. And you're a native Manitowoc. Manitowocan.
I
What is
am,
it?
which
What's the word?
it's
Manitowoc.
Manitowocian. Yeah. I don't know if we've ever, I don't know. Manitowocan, that sounds right. Yes, which is what makes it so exciting that I get to be the keynote at this conference in Manitowoc. So it is where I grew up. I went to high school there. I graduated there. I lived there my entire teenage life. Uh, it is near and dear to my heart. It's a beautiful little city. I can tell you where to get the best deep fried cheese curds.
Okay,
There's
do
some
it
good
right
dive
now.
bars if we decide to get out of the hotel and go explore the town. I know some good places. So yeah,
Nice.
it's great. It's beautiful on the harbor. If you have a chance to get out and walk along the lake, I highly recommend that. I'll have all sorts of tips for when we're at the conference.
Perfect. That sounds great.
Yeah.
And how often do you get back home?
Well, I actually don't. My mom doesn't. Well, my mom. I don't have any family there anymore, so I don't actually get back to Manitowoc very often. So maybe every few years we'll swing by and kind of stop at our favorite places. But it's been a few years. Yeah.
Well, we're happy to give you a reason.
Exactly. I'm so excited to have one.
Yeah. All right. So listen, if you guys have questions you want to ask Amy, this is open and interactive. Put them in the chat. Ken is kind of keeping an eye on the chat and
Okay.
we'll get all your questions answered.
Great.
I want to read just a sentence or two about the simplicity of cider and just ask you a few questions about it, if that's okay. But
I can't
any of
wait.
you who are here, your question can be anything.
Mhm.
Um, so this is set in Door County, Wisconsin. The story follows Sana. I just listened to it. Sana Lund, a fifth
Yeah.
generation cider maker, fighting to save her family's struggling apple orchard. Her quiet life changes when a traveling single father and his young son arrive to help on the farm. This was so charming. I just really I loved it. And somebody just put something in the chat that is also one of my questions. So why not? Let's just start with that. Thank you, Haley. I loved the magical element of the story. Did you always know what the magical element would be, or did that develop as you wrote the story? And one of the things that I wrote in my notes in big caps, the healing trees after they kissed, I thought that was just lovely. So anyway, go ahead.
Cute. So, this is a really good question, and you're asking me to go back into like over a decade to try and remember where the story came from.
Yeah.
Um, I think that if I'm remembering correctly, it evolved as I was writing. So I always knew I wanted to write, because when you're trying to pick which subject you want to write about, you choose things you want to research. And I really, really like hard cider. So this was a really good excuse for me to learn all about the process of making hard cider and of course do all of the different samplings. So that's where it started. And the magical elements came later. And I wonder, I've always loved fantastical books. Growing up, the first big person book I read was The Hobbit. And so magic is sort of a part of me. And if you have read any of my other books, the more recent books have more magical elements in them, and that's kind of the path I'd like to explore more. But I also love books kind of like Sarah Addison Allen's, I can't remember the name of the book right off the top of my head, but she has one that is witchy themed and very atmospheric. And I loved that a place sort of had the magic almost like mist in it. And that's kind of how I picture the orchard is it's very subtle. It has a little personality and I really coupled, I think, well with the synesthete. Oh, if you heard my dog is scratching at the door. She wants to come in. The synesthesia, I'm not going to say it right, synesthesia that Sana has. I just thought those magical elements kind of went hand in hand. And I love when you hear people talk about land that their family has been on. It no longer is just a piece of dirt. It starts to have a personality and it starts to have um, almost a character, becomes almost a character in itself. And that's sort of what started developing as I was writing that story. And yeah, and I just got to play with it. And I liked the idea of it responding to what was happening in Sana's life as well.
Yeah, that was a really great theme throughout, the way that the trees and parts of the orchard had been kind of not cooperating and not producing in the ways that they'd hoped, and how things came to life because there was more life there. I mean, that was really lovely.
Thank you.
Um,
I had to learn a
okay,
lot
so
about grafting trees.
that was going to be my next question. Well,
Oh,
I mean, not even
sorry.
the trees, but just the research you must have had to do, because of course well, first of all, Sana is 6'3". Thank you, Lord, as a 5'11" most of my life woman, for having a tall heroine.
It's all envy
I
based. I am
can't tell
five
you how much
four.
it meant to me.
Oh, yay. Thanks. Well, I love I have a few friends in my life who are like over 6 feet. And it's hard as a 5'4" woman to not be like, you must live in a whole different world up there. So it
Yes,
was
it's one where our pants are actually like always too
I
short and so are our
I know.
sleeves.
And mine are always too short.
Yep.
Um, so I loved this idea of I mean, I think when you're that tall, you kind of go through life feeling a little awkward as a woman, not feeling as feminine maybe. So I liked playing with those ideas. But and it was fun for me to try and put myself into the world of someone who was taller a little bit. But the other research, I actually pulled them. I had to go dig them out of my closet. I had two books I did a lot of research on how to make
Oh.
cider. Um, so yeah, so you could actually do it. And oh no, oh, I knew that was going to happen. And in fact, the name of the book came from one of them. There's a quote from some old cider maker that's the art of making good cider is of a great simplicity. So that's kind of that's where the book came from. The
That was the
title.
opening quote, right? From somebody
Yeah.
in Necedah,
Yes.
Wisconsin, right?
Um,
Or
I'm not
not?
sure.
I wonder.
That quote is from a French cider maker.
Oh, okay.
So it actually from his book Le Cidre in
Oh, okay.
1865.
That's where he got
Uh,
Nacida.
but who knows? It may have come up other places. And then as far as orchard blends, I knew a gentleman who ran an orchard at the Old World, Wisconsin, and he kind of showed me all of the different things that were involved in an orchard and the old trees and talking about heirloom apples. And so it was a lot of fun. I, of course, took several trips to Door County and spent a lot of time exploring things up there.
That
And
sounds terrible.
I know it was horrible. And it was all a write-off. How horrible. Um, so that's kind of did, books come together in funny ways. So it was all these different pieces, and this book was just so much fun to learn about all of those different parts. And and from a cider perspective, I would buy every new cider I came across. And that was a lot of fun because you have ones that everyone is familiar with, like Angry Orchard, which is, in my opinion, to some really weird, funky, almost barnyard tasting French ciders. So I just tasted the gamut and it was a lot of fun. I don't
Amy,
know if I answered your question.
we do, Amy, we have a really good question that just came in too. So when you talked about your first book and how many revisions that you did on that, what kind of advice was guiding those revisions, good or bad?
That's a great question. So a lot of it was coming from the background that I had, where I had been getting feedback on writing from a technical standpoint. And I also come from a background where I have my master's in English. So I do feel like I had a pretty good grounding of what feedback would be useful for editing and what wouldn't. So I was pretty good at weeding out what was helpful and what was not. So what was really good advice actually came from Anne Garvin, who I know was a keynote in a previous um, conference that you guys had. Uh, she was one of the first people that read a draft of my book because I met her fairly early on in my process. And she was very kind. She read like the first 5 or 6 chapters. She very kindly emailed me back and said, I'm not going to read any further because you are making a lot of beginner mistakes. Too much exposition, starting it in the wrong place. And she had several different things. And it was enough for me to then turn to the internet and be like, okay, well, how do I handle exposition? Okay, how do I do this? So I would go through, and exposition was a big one. Getting rid of all of those info drops and only giving information that the reader notes needs to know when they need to know it. So I would go through my draft and I would highlight everything that I felt was exposition, or maybe it was telling and not showing, that kind of stuff. And then I would try and fix as much as I could. So from a good and bad advice, I think it's important. I think it might be Neil Gaiman, however you say his last name, who said that you can tell good advice when they're telling you what's not working for them, but it's bad advice when they're telling you how to fix it. Because which I really like, because if you have people who aren't connecting to, say, a character in your book, and they say, well, you should have your character do XYZ. Well, that might not be the right thing for your book. That might be not be how you would want to fix it. But if they say, I'm not connecting with this character, now that's put something in your head and you're like, okay, well, what can I do to make this character more likable, more interesting, more engaging, more in danger, whatever they need to, you feel like you need to do. So I like that kind of advice. So I'm always leery when someone is like telling me exactly what to change, especially in those early rounds when it was me exchanging my writing with other new writers. Um, we didn't really quite know how to give feedback yet either. So there was a learning process on how to give feedback as well. And we would get really down in the weeds and like make word suggestions. And that's not the advice a lot of people need, especially in those early draft stages. You need big picture, like the characters aren't working or the plot is dragging or that kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
Where you
Uh,
lost me. Yeah.
oh, yeah,
No,
yeah.
I'm saying like
Oh,
where you lost me on
I'm
the
sorry, Well, sometimes I feel like I talk and weird little rambles, and so it's valid if I lost you. So
I
yeah,
mean, I would
that's
be remiss
yeah,
if I did not jump in and say that one of the reasons WWA offers critique groups is
yeah,
that they not only help you with your own writing, at least I feel like just participating made
yeah,
me have to learn the language to give feedback to someone else
yes.
and therefore helped me with my own writing. You know what I mean? It was
Oh
very
yeah,
rewarding in that way, but also
yeah.
very educational.
Well, yeah,
So,
now when I read, I have a small group that we will exchange things. And the kind of feedback we give is always very high end. I don't worry about proofreading or copywriting or or any of that stuff. Just sort of like, hey, I feel like this chapter needs a better tie up, or I need, I you kind of lost me with, I'd like another beat here in the story that explains this point to this point. I want something in between. That kind of stuff. Or,
yep,
I'm missing something. It's usually what am I missing? Or I got confused, or the back end isn't that kind of stuff. So
yep.
yeah, we give and it's usually like a paragraph, if that. It's very brief. We don't do it in line. That's the kind of feedback we give. So you find those partners over time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, can you tell us a little bit? Your main character in this novel has cynicism. I don't know
Yes.
if I did that right,
I've
but
never been able to say it correct.
I really, and that's a real thing that people
It is.
have where they basically will taste in color, or their right, their senses kind of get mixed
Yeah,
up.
they have colors that they associate with any number of things. I actually have a friend who associates colors with people. So I'm green. I'm a certain kind of like a Kelly green. And there was one person who she did not even know, but she wasn't a very good person. And I just showed her a picture and she's like, "Oh, that person's black."
Wow.
So and it's like instantaneous how she like, oh, this person's yellow and this person's red. And it was fascinating. And there are people I know who see colors with numbers. And I think if any of you have watched Big Bang Theory, Sheldon associates numbers and colors. So there's
Right.
all sorts of different things. And I just thought it would be really cool to have this character who, when she's making her cider blends, because apple cider is like wine, where yes, you can take one type of apple and make it into juice and then ferment it, and it is one thing. But a lot of times, like wine, it's blended with different juices to create something a little bit different, a little bit new. And so I liked this idea that, she'd have this green cider. Oh, I better do simpler colors because I'm not that good. A red cider and a blue cider, and she'd combine them to make a violet cider. So I liked that idea. And actually, I have this painting right here. I did a book event with an art gallery in Milwaukee, and one of the art they and like four different artists each drew or created paintings based on the book, Simplicity of Cider. And this one I bought because it's an apple and then it's got a color behind it. So she was kind of playing with that idea of colors and apples. And I thought
What a
that was
neat
really
idea.
fun. Yeah,
That's cool.
isn't that cool? So I thought
Yeah.
that was a really cool one. So yeah, I just thought that was a fun, when you're writing, you always try and come up with angles when you're creating a story that gives it a fresh take. And so I liked the idea of synesthesia. So sorry. I hope you all know what I'm talking about. And the cider making. I thought that was fun.
That was fun. Okay, I've got more questions in the chat. Good questions in the
Yay,
cat in the chat
chat.
here. Oh, by the way, and Haley, yeah, like the apples over the mantle in the book. That was totally
Mhm.
what I thought of too.
Yep.
Um, so Catherine asked whether you participate in workshops when you're kind of out and about building your books.
Oh, like groups, workshopping in small groups. I don't know if that's what you mean. I personally don't. Ever since that, excuse me, ever since my first book got picked up, I have really narrowed who I share my early drafts with. I have a small group of friends that I will workshop ideas with. But I tend to be a little bit more closed, and maybe it's paranoia. Because I was in the publishing circle, I didn't want to have things out there until they were done and published, if that makes sense. Um, just a little paranoid. Not that anybody is worried about spoiling my books. Um, so I tend to do that a little. And also, when I have an agent that I can bounce ideas off of, which is nice because you're getting a fast perspective on what publishers are buying and what they're interested in, and what they're not interested in, more importantly. So that's kind of helpful. I work, I guess that's a very long answer to I do, but it's a very small group that I have, if that makes
Got it.
sense.
And then Diana is curious if you have been with the same agent since you began publishing or if you've had different agents.
I have changed agents. I had, but I guess I should say for my first six books, I had the same agent, which is the only six books that are published. A month before my last book came out, I my agent and I separated ways, for a variety of reasons, but it just wasn't working anymore. And I quickly picked up a new agent who, um, I've been working with, but I haven't had a new book out. I had some personal family stuff that had resulted in me taking a hiatus, for a few years. Um, so, but that agent and I are now working on something new, and hopefully, I don't know. I can't tell you when. I gotta finish
Can't
it. I
tell
gotta
me,
finish
can
editing.
you give us like
A
any
little.
tiny little hint of anything, like what it
So
is
it
or what it's
is,
like?
it's much more fantastical than any of my other books. For people who have read any of my books, like I know Trisha is familiar with the things I've written. My last two books, I had a Christmas book that was set in a magical Christmas market. And then the book before that is about a woman whose family has a secret, and the women can see ghosts, and they help them with unfinished business. And that book's set in the Dells. And so there's these fun magical elements that are in it. And the next book I have is really just jumping off the end of the pier, and it's going to be mothers and daughters with magic and monsters. So it'll still be, I hope it's still going to be fun and light, but there's just it's one of those situations where there's the human world that and they know nothing about the magical world that's living underneath it. And I love those. Those are like my favorite things because I like to pretend that, werewolves might be out there and we just don't know it.
I mean, the world is a lot more fun when we play.
It is a lot more fun. So
No
I
matter how
love
old we
I
are.
love playing with those ideas. So there, but I love the idea of, I deal with mothers and daughters a lot in especially one of my books, The Optimist's Guide to Letting Go. That's what that book is all about. And I love that. So it's still very Amy topics, just with more magic.
Love it.
Yeah.
That sounds great. Best of luck to you. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
always fun
I
to
have
do
a
something a
draft. I'm
little
doing a
different.
major re-edit, and it's just it will be a major part probably of my keynote and the struggles that
Okay, good.
I've had
There you go. Good. Can't wait.
and how we're working through those.
Yeah. All right. So here's one from Dawn. How do you grow into giving quality feedback like you and your group do?
Well, I
That's
think
a
number
really good
one,
question.
think about the kind of feedback you've received that's very helpful. I think that's a good, I mean, it's the golden rule. You want to give what you want to get.
Practice. I mean,
Yes.
that's what mine was. And let me
Yeah.
just say that when I was new, I was the person that was like, I loved this. I loved this. Because you don't know.
Right.
Like, I mean, you have to learn and see what is
Yes.
resonant for you too. So I don't know.
Or
What you got?
for me, those early, like before when I was with my first book and I was exchanging with other writers who were also at that point unpublished. So we were all kind of in the same boat. And I think it is helpful when you're working with writers that are kind of in the same spot because you're going through the same things together. Um, and I do think that's helpful. Unfortunately, Emily Giffen probably isn't going to read the draft of your book and give you feedback. It would be nice if she did, but or Stephen King, that would be great too. So that's probably the number one rule. And I think if you think about books that you have read that have been published, or movies even that you've watched, and you're kind of like, I didn't really like that. Think about the big reason why you didn't like that. Was it because they didn't develop the characters enough? I didn't really feel like I knew them, or did it drag? I don't know. I don't think this, well, that's too recent. I can't do that. I was going to talk about The Bear. I can do talk about The Bear. I think The Bear, the most recent season, this isn't a spoiler. I personally thought the season was slow to start. I would have liked things to get rolling faster. So that's not me telling the bear how to fix it, but that's sort of big picture feedback. That I think is helpful to get people to focus. And or maybe there's just one or two things. You're reading a friend's manuscript and there's just a lot of things that they need to work on. Maybe just give them feedback on a couple parts. Maybe, hey, you're doing a lot of showing or telling, not showing. Why don't you go, have them study up on that and learn and then revise things? Or, hey, the first person, you're writing in first person and I still don't feel like I know what the main character is about. Those are big picture things, big picture things. Something you can write in like a paragraph, I think is a good place to start. And then if they need more information or they want more examples, then they can come back and ask you questions. So that's,
Yeah,
I don't know,
that's super helpful.
helpful.
Yeah, practicing with the stuff that we are
Yeah.
consuming. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Yes. I do that a lot. And sometimes it's a problem now because you'll be reading a book and you'll be like, okay, I know exactly how this is going to play out because I've written.
Yeah,
That's
that just
hard.
happened to me. I was watching a TV show and I said, "Oh yeah, they're gonna have her pregnant. Here comes, here comes, here comes." And then, of course, that was it. And I was, man, there is a downside to this writing gig because I was
It
not like
is.
that before
It
before I
is.
started.
Yep. I watch a lot of shows with my family and, I'll call things that I'm like, oh, that person's, like you said, oh, that one's going to be pregnant or that one's going to die. And sure enough, three scenes later, they're like, wow, you're so good at that. No, you
I
see
may
the
not be good
little,
at seeding myself, but I can spot it in others at
yep.
least. I'll
Yes.
say that.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to turn quick to a question about the book that
Okay.
I'd like to ask, which was, the heart of this story was ultimately this family that had been there for generations. And I loved the way, so you had Sana talking in her point of view. This was a mixed point of view book too, by
Mhm.
the way, which was well done and tricky.
Thank you.
Um, and you had Sana talking about how she used some shorthand for L1, L2, L3 because she did her own research into her family's history, and that's what she
Mhm.
called the Luns. Her last name starts with an
Yep.
L, the L1s, the L2s, and she was herself an L5. Can you share just a little bit about where that came from? And I just thought that was really neat.
Oh my gosh, you went deep in the weeds.
I mean, I did tell you
I
I just finished it today.
oh I if I'm remember, and I'm so sorry that I don't have this off the top of my head. I should have went through my notes and I didn't. I want to say that that is derived from uh, how apple heirloom varieties are tracked.
Oh, sure.
Um, that is sort of what's clicking in my head. That when you're talking about, okay, this tree is an L4 or an H5, that's kind so that's she's transferred how she talks about apples to how she talks about her family.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I'm
She might have even
I'm
said that. I just didn't remember.
96% sure that's what it is. Or I'm just making it up. I do that because that's what I do for a living is I make stuff up.
That's right. I really thought that I felt that that sort of
Yeah.
contributed to the
Yeah.
mystery and the not the mystery, the sort of I don't know, the magical part of it a little bit was
Oh,
just
thank
sort of
you.
this sense that there was this long history on that
Yeah.
farm doing that orchard. I don't know, it was neat. Okay. Next up, Miss Kim Sewer. Her question is, you show great restraint when it comes to backstory and the simplicity of cider. Did you have to murder a bunch of darlings to get it that tight?
Um, that is a really great question. Yes and no. I I write really, really, really short drafts. I think it comes from my technical writing background where I want to write efficiently and use the least amount of words to make the point I want to make. So usually what I'm doing is I write a draft and then my agent or one of my friends will read it and they'll be like, "You are missing a whole bunch of stuff. I need to understand why this character is doing this." And then I go back and I fill in, I spackle all of those spots. That being said, I do, when I'm writing, sort out what their pasts are and what that means. And so when I'm going back, and while it's not in that draft, it's either in my notes or it's in my brain somewhere that I just have to pull it out and put it on the paper, if that makes sense. Um, it is, I am a lean writer though. I like, I want to say my drafts, my first drafts are often in the 60 to 65,000 word count range. And then by the end, they're kind of like between 80 and 90. So that's, I'm not a cutter, I'm an adder, if that makes
I
sense.
also seem,
I
I don't know if I have enough drafts to have a characterization, and somehow it makes me feel better knowing that you were like that.
Yeah, I hate cutting things.
Hmm.
So I tend to not write it unless I know it's going to be in there.
All right.
That being said, my current book that I'm working on is over 90,000 and I wrote it as a single, it's the first time I've ever written, good Lord, written in first person. And after a discussion with and it was only from one character's point of view, my agent said she wants me to do it from two different points of view. So I'm like, well, crap, this is going to be like 120,000 words. Even after, so I will be murdering quite a few darlings in this current draft. Whole side plots are getting cut. It's a bummer.
Oh boy.
I know, but that's okay. It's all part of the process and it will be better for it.
Do you have any tips for, I don't know, or maybe suggestions for how you learned how to write POV? Because I did notice, like I said in this book, you
Ah,
kind of move from character to character, and it
yes.
really, I was listening to it, which was n- unusual for me, and I
Yeah.
could tell really fast whose head I was in. Like, I mean,
Oh,
it was well done.
thank you.
Mhm.
Um, so all my published books are all third person point of view, but there's only one book where it's a single person's perspective. So I call it's third person, but it's close. So you are in that person's, it's as if you are like driving them and or they're a video game and you're the controller. Well, you're not the controller. I'm the controller, but it's that person. Um, I don't know if that made any sense. So you're experiencing a lot of what they're experiencing. So I really spent a lot of time thinking about what does this character know? What are they thinking about? What are they seeing? What are they touching? What would that be like for them? So, like with Sana, she's going to see all the different colors with the apples. She's going to be taller, so she can reach things on high shelves. And her clothes aren't going to fit great. And she likes to wear like her dad's clothes because they fit her. Um, so those are the things, or um, some of the chapters are from Bass's perspective, if I'm remembering that correctly.
Yep. Yep.
I, like I said, I
The
was
child is
rereading
fast.
this. Yes, and that was he was a lot of fun to write because
I
I
bet.
don't base characters on real people ever. In fact, I've intentionally changed characters because they were skewing a little close to somebody that I knew in real life. Bass is the only exception in any of my books. He is a time capsule of my son at that age. And I had a lot of fun thinking about what the world is like from his perspective. Um, and, there's a little thing with Bass in the book where he has named his butt. And my son had named his butt Gary. So that made it into the book. And boy, did he like telling all of his friends that. And he would walk around going farts and butts and farts and butts and farts and butts. So
Just
that's
like the character.
just like the
Yep.
character. So those things are straight from my son.
I really
And
love that. That's
yeah,
cool.
because they're just little crazy critters, but at the same time, they're still young enough that at that age they want to cuddle with you and they're sweet and they're so curious and they don't have that adult filter yet. So it was really, really fun. So yeah, when you're writing from a person's point of view, that's really what I like to think about is what are they seeing? What are they thinking? What are they feeling? And from a if you're somebody who writes in first person, I am on that journey right now, and it is a bit of a change because you really do need to take it that much further to make it more intense, more in that person's head. I don't know if I'm being successful at it. Third person was always a safe place for me. So this is a new thing, a new challenge for me to see if I can even do it.
Yeah, new genre kind of and a new
Yeah.
POV. So that's,
Yeah.
way to push
I
yourself.
even I experimented so far as I took the first chapter from each of the characters' point of views and I wrote them in third and first. And yeah, I just think you when you're writing in first, you can be a little bit more uh have a little bit more of the personality show through in what they're thinking. Whereas like if you're in third person, you almost have to put their thoughts in like quotes or italics or something. Whereas if it's just first person, you can just have them say it and it doesn't have to be said. It's just different, I think.
Mhm.
I don't know. We'll see if I'm doing it right someday.
Perfect.
Lots of
All right.
uncertainty, even though I've been doing it for a while.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Dawn, for this one. Do you ever have your characters look at where you have them going, laugh hysterically, and do a 180 onto a totally different path? That's a good question.
Oh, I love that. Um, I have to have had that happen. I have had circumstances where I have just been writing a chapter and I don't know. There are people who talk about their characters as if they're in their head talking to them, and I'm not quite like that for the most part. But I did have one time one of my characters was I was writing the scene and he was acting a certain way and like a light bulb. It was his whole truth. It's like he said, idiot, the reason I'm doing this is because of XYZ. And I'm like, oh, that makes so much more sense. Um, so I've had that, yeah, that happens. Sometimes it just pops into your head and it just makes perfect sense. And I have a lot of, I'm just about to fall asleep and some brilliant idea pops into my head. And then you have to like rouse yourself up out of near sleep and either write something barely comprehensible on your phone or have paper, which I used to do, but when I do that, it's dark and you can't read it. So I've just started doing my notes app, or I'll text myself, either or. Yeah.
What do you write in?
I write in Scrivener is my preferred place to write. But I do like I'll text myself notes that I will eventually copy over into like one little file in my Scrivener file that's just random things that I plunk in there and then I can go back and say, okay, this is what I was thinking. But Scrivener, I've been using that since I think midway through my first book for a long time. And I'm a big fan. I like to move things around. I like to write scenes so they're their own little things so I can move them around really easily. I like all the little features, not all of them. Um, and I have it took me a while, but I have it set up just the way I like it. But and because to me, Word, I have there comes a point when you're working with a publisher. And because when I send it to them, I'll export it and compile it as a Word document and they'll put their comments in and give it back. But there comes a point where you have to leave track changes on back and forth. And so it has to stay in a Word document. And that I hate because it inevitably, at least once, something isn't going to save right. It's going to crash. Something bad's going to happen. And I just, Word, I hate Word. I hate it. But there it is.
Yeah, I feel you.
Yeah.
Um,
Scrivener.
so you've been kind of in the industry basically and in being a working writer for a while,
Yeah.
even though you had a break there. I'm
Mhm.
wondering if you have any, I don't even know, I want to say dirt, but I want to ask it more professionally than that. But do you have any like dramatic stories that would maybe help educate us as to things that you learned that would be helpful for us to know?
Wow. I the longer you're in the industry, I think the more cynical it is to be. It's easy to become very, very cynical. Um, because you see a lot of great books that don't get the attention they deserve, and then you see a lot of books that are that get this rainstorm of riches and treated as if they're the next great American novel. And that's hard to watch for a really long time. You have to find and keep close to yourself why you do this. Do you do this because you want to be a New York Times bestseller and that's the only way you're going to be satisfied? Because if that's the case, it is super, 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 super hard to do that. You have to. I have a friend that watches that very closely, and to be a New York Times bestseller, everything has to line up right, or your name has to be Colleen Hoover, Taylor Jenkins Reid, Stephen King. I mean, there are Sarah J. Maas is going to dominate it again soon. Um, so it is really, really hard to break into those things. So you have to think about why you do it. And that's a journey you're going to go on in your own time and in your own way. And for me, I do it for two main reasons. One is very personal. It's that moment when you're writing and either you come up with the perfect solution or you have an amazing phrase, something that just you've done something on the page that gives yourself goosebumps. Oh, I love that moment when it all works. It doesn't happen a lot, but when it works, oh, it feels so good. And the second is when I get to talk to people who have read my books and it has meant something to them. Because I don't write the next great American novel. I call them comfort books. They're books that when you read, they're going to make you feel good and you might want to hug them. And they're going to just make your day a little brighter for a little while. You may not remember what the plot is the next day. They're not the most flawlessly written thing, but that's the kind of book I write. So when a reader comes up to me and they share that something meant something to them, it really means the world to me. So that's to me, those are the two things that's why I sit down at my computer and that's why I keep going. And if there is some giant moment of success at some point, that would be great. That's just icing on the cake. So I guess that's one of the things. But boy, have I heard some stories. One second. I have a book y'all want to check out. If you want some ridiculous stories, this is a book. It's a mystery-ish book called The Ending Writes Itself. It's written by two writers. V.E. Schwab is one of them. They have a pen name, Evelyn Clark. Um, the other one is Kat Clark. So it is a story about a famous writer dies. He didn't finish his big last book. So they bring in like six different writers, I think it's six, from different genres to this isolated place to have a contest to see who can finish it. And and then people start dying because it's a mystery thriller situation. It's a great book. It's really well written. But if you want crazy stories from the publishing industry, while they don't say this is all in a fictional world, all of these crazy writing stories are based on stories they've heard from friends. So it's really a fun book to read, to be like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened. But I've had friends who their book launch has been ruined because semi trucks that were containing their books lit on fire and they couldn't be delivered to Target. So, and there's just nothing you can
Wow.
do. You have a small window to get your book out there and try and sell it. And if it goes up in flames, there's nothing you can do. So, yeah, I've had strange things happen to people. Yeah, I'll try and
That's
think
a
of
really
some
good
good ones. Yeah,
that's a really good tip. I feel like that book is
it's a
it's
great
not even
book.
on my to be it's already on my to be read pile in
Yeah,
my head.
yeah, it's a great book. It's really, really fun. And I do think from a totally different perspective, um, Yellowface by, oh, I can't remember her last name, Kwan. It has a different perspective on some of the decisions that go on in publishing. I kind of can't believe that they let it get published, but they did,
Really?
and it did really well. R.F. Kwan,
And that's
K-U-A.
fiction or
That's fiction. Here, let me grab it. Da, da, da.
oh, nice. I
Yeah,
think I've
yeah,
seen
yeah.
this
R.F.
one.
Kwan. So this one is about oh, it's been a while since I've read it. A writer publishes a book and it explodes, and she is, I believe, of Asian descent. And it turns out that she stole the book idea from somebody else, and I that's all I can remember.
Wow.
But it's got some good publishing stuff in it. So those two books I think are fun. What's the nasty little stuff that happens in the publishing world? I think those are fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Thank you. That's good
Yeah.
tips.
And I'm gonna have books all over.
Yeah, I mean, you look like you might be a writer
Yeah.
just based on what's behind you.
I have a book buying problem. I'm sure many of you suffer from this as well. I tend to just buy a lot of books and adopt them, and they don't get read. So a lot of times people talk about, hey, have you read this? Have you read this? I'm like, no, but it's on my shelf. And
Yeah.
I have different stages. I have like the books that I've given up on that I've bought and not read are in there. This is the I want to try and read soon. And there's another shelf here that's sort of soon. And then the books over here are ones that I've read. So yeah, I have a
Uh,
problem.
got a system. You're organized.
Yeah.
You have a genre that you read, or are you all over the place?
Um, I fantasy is where my heart is. I have always been a fantasy reader. So I try and because I am trying to write that, I've been reading a lot more of it lately, which is a lot of fun. But I love romance. I love women's fiction. I read all of, but then I read all over the board. I try and filter in literary. I try and filter in a nonfiction once in a while, even though I don't really like nonfiction. Um, I am a little into horror lately. I'm open to that, where for a long time I wasn't. And if anybody likes horror, one of my friends, her name is Karma Brown, wrote an amazing book called Mother is Watching. So good. It's about an art restorer who's restoring a haunted painting. And it's kind of in like a slightly dystopian future. It's great. But that's kind of but I read all over the board. Yeah.
And other than with the project you're working on now, are all of
Mhm.
your books kind of in that romance category? Are they all the
Yes.
same, basically? Yeah.
Yeah, they're all, I call, who call them light women's fiction. Like when I started, it was called light women's fiction because we couldn't call it chick flick because that was a term we didn't use anymore. But because they were more complicated than a traditional romance, they didn't put it there. But I like to say they're rom-commy comfort reads. All of my books are set in Wisconsin. They all have romantic elements and they all have food elements.
Okay.
So,
Got it.
yeah.
I often wonder about the term women's fiction, and I kind of want to pummel it sometimes.
As you
FYI.
should. It's the dumbest term ever because you don't call it men's fiction.
Exactly.
You called it men's fiction, then fine. But you don't. It's just fiction. It's commercial fiction, is what it is,
Yeah.
with romantic elements.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's all marketing and how they're going to position it in
In
the
the
bookstore.
shelves.
So yeah, because
Yeah.
most of my books are like if you go into a Barnes, they're usually in the fiction section and not the romance section because they're not spicy.
Mhm.
Like I actually think of all of my books, The Simplicity of Cider is the spiciest.
Oh, really?
So that should
Nice.
give you a nice benchmark for where I am. It's a very closed door. That's kind of it. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Amy. This has been such a delight to chat with
Thank
you. We
you.
are like 4 minutes before the top of the hour. If anybody has been dying to ask that question, you
How is
can do it
it?
now.
Time flew, man.
It really did. It was a real fun conversation. And it's going to be really exciting to have you at the conference. I can't wait to meet you in person.
Oh, I can't wait to meet you. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
gonna be fun. I've even started putting notes down on what I'm gonna say. Trisha made
Oh,
me do
good.
my homework and have ideas.
Yeah, good. She's a good taskmaster.
She's very good at that. She's like, "Hey, I need to know the topic." I'm like, all
Yeah.
right. But
You
that's
guys,
good
thank you
because
so much for
yeah,
coming. I really
thank
appreciate seeing you
you.
all.
See you. Hope
Yeah.
to see you all in October. Manitowoc's a lot of fun.